Hi guys. Today I was basically going to talk about can we trust our urologist's opinions? Now this video is in relationship to adults sort of experiencing foreskin retraction issues. I had a foreskin retraction issue myself, and I've dealt with three urologists personally. Now I'm not going to say which of these issues I raise, if what's the exact, if I'm right or wrong. It's just something to consider, and I'd also really like to hear anyone else's experiences with urologists and sort of get their feedback and opinions and sort of weigh in on this conversation. Now, what I will talk about is my own personal experiences with the three urologists I've dealt with, and also just relay some other men's experiences that I've interacted with via the Willy Wellbeing forums. The first topic or issue I would like to talk about is the urologist potentially motivated by money? Now, this is a good issue. So when you see a urologist, in my own personal experience and also with other men I've spoken to, if there's any sort of kind of foreskin retraction issue, generally they jump straight to offering circumcision. Now, but potentially medically, that could be the most sound approach. Many people will disagree with that. In my experience, when I went to a private clinic to seek advice from a urologist, and yes, surgery was promoted, either frenuloplasty or circumcision. Now, could have this particular doctor had a financial motive or the clinic had a financial motive for me to do the surgery? I would say yes, they could have definitely had a financial motive, given the fact that I paid out of pocket with the surgery. It was a for-profit institution, and the surgery was expensive. For example, the consultation went for about half an hour with the urologist, the initial consultation. But the surgery, when I did eventually get it performed, went for maybe a similar duration. It was actually maybe 10, 15 times the price of just a consultation. So obviously there's a lot more money being turned over by this urologist being scheduled for a 1 hour surgery as opposed to a 1 hour consultation. So yeah, that's something to consider. There could actually be a financial motive either by by the surgeon himself, by the urologist himself, or potentially the clinic he's working for. Now the next issue I would like to talk about is basically, given the fact that circumcision is usually a highly recommended plan of attack to solving foreskin retraction issues, could the urologist be influenced by religious beliefs in relating to circumcision? Because they're pushing circumcision, but potentially this urologist could be of a religious background where everyone's circumcised. And could this be playing a bias on their decision, where they're not giving the most medical sound advice? It's just his opinion that people should be circumcised anyway, or his or her opinion. Now, I'd like to think that the urologist would be acting in a professional manner and removing both religious and personal bias, but I would not eliminate this as a possibility. In a similar fashion, it's a big debate in some countries about abortion, and potentially some doctors or some medical professionals might be giving biased information, not the most medically accurate information. Rather, they're skewing the information based on their personal or religious beliefs. The next issue I'd like to talk about is potentially the urologist, again, when they're promoting surgery as a course of solution, which tends to be, I'm talking about this a lot because this is, I think, a big issue. They tend to go straight towards the surgical solution. Now, could there be some sort of influence there because of just basically the urologist? He's a professional. He wants to exercise what he's a professional at, which, from my understanding, is performing these surgeries, the circumcision, the frenuloplasty. They could be a complete expert at this, and so do they have a professional motive or just the other kind of personal motives influencing their opinion? In my time when I was dealing with urologists, sex was never discussed, and what are the potential impacts of how this would affect the man sexually, his ability to enjoy sex, or will it affect any kind of surgery? Would it affect the sensitivity? It was very quickly disregarded and considered a non-important element of the treatment. Now, it depends on the man's situation. Potentially, it's not possible for them to have sex due to their foreskin retraction issue. There could be pain involved or whatever. Maybe the treatment's better for them. But the fact that it wasn't ever addressed with the 3 urologists I spoke to, that bothers me, because I'm certain that any kind of procedure on your penis, such as frenuloplasty and circumcision, does impact on your sex life, and potentially in a negative way. These risks were never discussed with me. I had a frenuloplasty surgery performed, and it has affected the sensation. It may be, potentially it could be improving, but it's also I've also spoken to another guy who had frenuloplasty, and again, he felt that it really impacted in a negative way on his sex life, and he had the same thing. These was never once mentioned by the urologist to him. He saw the urologist about his situation, his foreskin retraction issue, and he had this confidence that the urologist was making the best medical decision for him, and he proceeded and had also frenuloplasty surgery, and he's since having a lot of anxiety and stress and depression relating to the fact that he had this surgery performed, because he feels that it's impacted on his sex life in such a detrimental way. When sex is mentioned, if I've read on various forums, other men's comments, and on my own experience and other men I've spoken to as well, it seems that if men are saying, oh, after sort of treatment, sex has now been a problem for them, it's often sort of disregarded as a psychological issue. It's really now become, the urologist, the one man I spoke to, the urologist, said the problem you're experiencing with sex is psychological. That I haven't damaged your penis, the sensitivity should be the same, it's all psychological. Now, even if this urologist was correct and this was a psychological issue for this particular man, what kind of a medical professional would he be if he performed a surgery which could have potentially led to psychological conditions, and he's performed this surgery, and now he's just sort of disregarding the problem? Oh, I've done my part of the job. Now I've given you a psychological problem. No, you wouldn't expect to go to the hospital and get your arm repaired, and then the doctor say, oh, I've repaired your arm, but I've given you schizophrenia. So what? So be it. That this is not. I don't feel that this is appropriate behavior. Now, let's face it, sex is an important element of anyone's life, and the desire to have a healthy and fun, functional sex life is perfectly normal, and it shouldn't be toned down or disregarded, or the men should not be made to feel guilty or overreacting when they're inquiring about how this is going to impact on their sex life. It's a very important thing that should not be downplayed. In my experience with the urologist I spoke to as well, I found that alternative treatments were disregarded very quickly. So they were, again, all pushing for surgery, and none of them gave a clear answer on, could manually stretching the foreskin potentially widen it, improve the problem. This was played down very quickly. And there's an even better alternative form of treatment for some foreskin retraction, is given in my situation where it wasn't affecting my life in any medical way, but it was having some interference with my sex life before I had surgery, this is. Now, really looking back at my experience, a course of action could have been a change of behavior in the bedroom, which could have been addressed with my partner and I. Potentially surgery wasn't even required. It wasn't, say, for example, I was getting infections, or there was pain urinating or anything like that. It was really only affecting me sexually. So, and there was ways that me and my partner could both enjoy each other sexually, um, you know, before the surgery. So this was, again, going back to my previous point about sex. Sex wasn't talked about, and this it could have been addressed in a different way. So there are just a few thoughts. Some things for you guys to consider when you're dealing with your urologist. But keep an open mind, and I would suggest always seeking a second opinion. I mean, I do have a great deal of respect for medical professionals. Normally, I would be sort of always sort of open to taking their advice, but I really feel that given the fact that this is a very important element of a man's life, you should really get a second opinion and really consider, scrutinize your urologist's input, especially when it comes to the area of them suggesting surgery, because once you get surgery, there's no going back. So you got to keep that in mind as well. And I'd love to hear anyone else's opinions or sort of experiences in relation to this video as well.